Please talk to me.
There's nothing to talk about. We had our chance and we lost. I lost.
Then you have to keep fighting.
You heard what Hook said. Pan is a demon.
And you are a...
What? A savior? Because if that were true, this map would have shown us the way already.
Maybe who you think you are isn't who you really are.
What do you mean?
Sometimes we think we know ourselves, but we need a push to show us the reality. That boy with the knife. You stopped fighting him. Why?
Because he was just a boy.
No, there was something else. I saw it in your eyes. Why did you stop?
Why? Because when I looked at his face, I saw me.
Go on.
That look in his eyes. The despair. I had it back when I was in the foster system. Just a lost little girl who didn't matter. I didn't think she ever would. A little girl who cried herself to sleep at night because she wanted her parents so bad. And could never understand why they gave her up.
And then you found us. It was too late.
It's just on this island. I don't feel like a hero or a savior. I just feel like what I've always been. An orphan.
Welcome back to another video where I discuss the characters from Once Upon a Time. So let's talk about Emma Swan. Emma is the main character of Once Upon a Time. She is the daughter of Snow White and Prince Charming and was sent through a wardrobe or a magic tree to the real world or world without magic, where she lived and grew up till she reached the age of 28, and her son, who she gave up for adoption, brings her back to town to break the curse. Okay, so let's talk about Emma. I did not start liking her until the second watch of the series. And the main reason was the scene where um her and the evil queen, also known as Regina, are going back and forth, and she turns around and says, "He's not your son, he's mine." And for some reason that aggravated me so much the first time around. Like I held that grudge against her. Um, and then after watching, it's like, well, yeah, she did give him up for adoption, but also she would not have given him up if Regina had not, um, you know, enacted the evil curse that she did. So I guess she had kind of a right to, snap at her like that. But so let's get into Emma. Like I said, got sent through the wardrobe, and she grew up in foster care or in multiple foster homes. She was actually never adopted until she aged out of the system and became a Bell's Bond person. And her career actually makes so much sense for, what she had gone through, and being someone who, I believe she's always kind of wanted to know where she came from. Of course, any child who had to grow up without any answers, they want to know kind of what happened. I mean, I was also adopted, but I knew my situation and I was much older. I wasn't like a baby or anything. But anyway, so with Emma being a bail bonds person where she searches for people, I thought that was very interesting, because she started out searching for her parents, and now she's kind of turned it into kind of, I guess, I wonder if this would be considered post-traumatic growth, because she did go through some traumatic things and she kind of turned it around and made a living out of it. She did still live a pretty lonely life, but I think she made use of kind of what she had. And and you know, she kept those walls up. And I think her being introduced to Henry, even her, you know, thinking about it in hindsight, when she threatened to call the police on Henry and he's like, please don't, and he admitted to her, you know, the situation. I believe that was even some of her walls coming down, because what reason did she have to drive this kid, you know, all the way back home? I can't remember how far Maine and Storybrooke were. And here I am saying Storybrooke again. And I know someone on the last post made a mention. I keep correcting myself. So if I say Storybrooke, it's just going to be what it is. Okay, so back to Emma. She definitely, you know, well, I can't say definitely, but I believe kind of her walls fell down when she agreed to, you know, drive him back home. So that was kind of our first inkling on what was to come. Um, and you know, I believe her being the savior. I mean, it's just so much to unpack. So her being the savior, but also feeling like she could not save herself, the amount of stress and just anxiety that she went through, first even accepting that she is some sort of savior, you know. And back to season 3, when they went to Neverland, that's when Pan gave her a map and told her she had to admit who she really was in order to find Henry. And, you know, who she felt like and who people viewed her as were just completely different. You know, she was the savior, is the savior, but she can't help but going back to her child self and just feeling abandoned, you know, feeling like an orphan. And that's very understandable. You know, she spent her whole life being alone, you know, in those ways and not having family. And then when she did, I guess, get her first friend, it ended up being, you know, again, it's like her past and her things that had nothing to do with her is hunting her. But the one friend she meets ends up being kind of messed up, but only because Emma's parents put evilness inside of her. And so you see how, or at least I see that a lot of Emma's story is just kind of having to deal with things that have nothing to do with her and having to not only save the day when she didn't cause, I mean, this is all stuff of her parents. What they say, you pay for your parents' sins. Um, okay, so some of her personality type, she is, you know, very independent, hyper independent, super skeptical, but she is very loyal. She has high consciousness. I think she has pretty decent openness. You know, back to when Henry got her to drive him home. I think you have to be pretty open to accept that. So from the beginning, and then um, she has moderate neuroticism. So I think that a lot of Emma's defense mechanisms that we see have served her. And I think this is a lot of people who have experienced certain traumatic events or, you know, just abandonment, neglect, these type of things that you have to build these defense mechanisms so you can survive. And so sometimes we get to a point of our lives where it's not necessary anymore. Similar to how when Emma found her family, and even when love started to brew, you know, between her and Hook, or even her and Neil when he first got back, she she didn't need those defenses anymore. And you saw them pop up a little bit, but she was so open and willing to kind of forgive and move on until something happened that she felt like she needed to fix by herself. And then all of those, you know, defense mechanisms that she worked so hard to kind of push to the side because they weren't needed, they all came back like just automatically. You know, the first thing she did was erase everyone's memories and and separate herself from everyone to try to fix it. Um, so that definitely is on brand for someone who has experienced things like she has. Oh, and another traumatic event, I mean, not only her being in foster care, but also her sending her son away. That's a that could possibly be a scar as well. So I think that she is avoidant and somewhat disorganized. Um, of course, again, due to that early abandonment, she kind of pushed people away. That was her initial reaction. When she met Mary Margaret before they knew that they were family, she didn't even want a roommate with her. I mean, she says she doesn't make a good roommate, I believe it was. And even that was too much of an attachment for her. So her even trying to navigate these emotions that she felt, but also um holding up those walls, but also kind of breaking them down for Henry, and I'm just thinking about it now, but thinking about how that was like a dual thing that she kind of had to work with. Um, and I think that Regina kind of trying to get in the way of that is what made her want to push back and fight for Henry. So initially, and maybe it is that she felt this pull towards him or she had been thinking about him, but it seemed like how Regina reacted to her, that's what made her want to fight for him. And then, over time, of course, she kind of got to know him as a kid, and just fall in love with him that way, not only as her kid. So another example of her being kind of avoidant is when Hook tells her, that he loves her. Um, and she could not say it. The only time she could tell Hook that she loved him at one point was when they were about to die. I mean, even when she called her parents, her mom and dad, it's because she was about to die. So that fear, I mean, she held on to that fear and that anger as long as she could. And I'm just happy, Henry played a part in helping her break it down. And not only that, I also think the evil queen also played a part in helping her break those walls down. Her being able to work with Regina and understand that Regina is not evil. She's made horrible decisions and she didn't have the history that Snow and Charming had. So that was interesting to also see how Regina broke down her walls. I think her core fear is people always leave, so
Please talk to
you
me.
may
There's
as
nothing to talk
well
about. We had our
go ahead
chance and
and
we
beat them
lost.
to the
I lost.
punch.
Then you have to keep
And I think
fighting.
that,
You heard what Hook
of
said.
course,
Pan
stems
is a
from her
demon.
childhood.
And you are a what? A
And I
savior?
think she
Because if that were true,
also
this map would have shown
at
us the
one
way
point
already.
believed she could only rely on herself. I mean, on top of her being in just multiple foster homes, I
Maybe who
think
you think you are
when,
isn't who you really are.
yeah,
What
she
do you
had
mean?
that,
Sometimes we
she
think we
still
know
had, I was trying
ourselves,
to
but
remember if
we need a
the
push
Snow
to show
Queen
us the
took her
reality.
memories or not, but no, because she
That
recognized
boy
her
with the
when
knife.
they showed the
You stopped
flashback
fighting
and
him.
she went to
Why? Because he was
Storybook and got some ice
Just a
cream.
boy.
No, there was
And
something else.
so,
I saw it in your
um,
eyes.
even her experiencing
Why did you
that with
stop?
the Snow Queen, she thought
Why?
she had a family
Because when I looked
and
at his face, I
that it
saw
was going to
me.
work, and then the Snow Queen kind of bugs out and
Go
push
on.
her in front of a car. So
That look in his
that was
eyes.
another
The
letdown of Emma,
despair.
because I think she says,
I
of
had it
course the only person
back
that
when I
will
was in the
want
foster
me
system.
is, I can't remember exactly what she called, like a weirdo or something.
Just a lost little girl
So
who
she
didn't
just has
matter.
been let down so many
Didn't
times,
think she ever would.
and Neil, Neil leaving
A little
her in
girl
prison,
who cried herself to
I
sleep at
think
night
that
because
was the ultimate. I
she
think that
wanted
was
her
her last
parents so
straw.
bad
I believe that that was when, that was it for
and
her.
could never
She cut her
understand
ties with Henry, after that. And I think it was
why
not
they
only
gave
to
her
give
up.
him his best chance, but also it kind of falls in line with how she's like, no, I can't have any
Then you
attachments to
found us.
anybody. I
It
already
was
discussed
too
her
late.
hyper independence.
It's just
She suppresses
on
her
this
emotions a
island.
lot, does not
I don't
cry
feel like
or didn't. Over time we
a
saw her
hero
evolve.
or a savior.
But
I
she
just feel like
is very
what I've always been,
good at being in control or wanting to be in
an orphan.
control. And, it always kicks in. I mean, she kind of goes through this panic where it's like, I can't do this, I can't do this. And then, you know, her always shows up for herself. And I think this is that hyper independence is like right when you're at your breaking point, You always show up for yourself. And that I can relate to that because it it does happen like that where you think you're at your last, straw where you can't just go anymore, and then you surprise yourself and you show up for yourself. And that's just a reminder that I have to show up for myself. Um, so I think she also used anger as a protection. And I think for some time, like when someone gave her a reason to be angry, she just did not want to let it go. And the first thing that pops in my head is when she found out that Snow and Charming kind of altered her, who she was, and put evil into another child. And so she held on to that. And of course, she had the every right to be upset, but I think Emma wanted to kind of hang on to that anger, which I can understand because, sometimes the anger just makes you feel grounded, and you feel like without it, who are you without it? You might just disappear or float away. It's like it keeps you grounded. When you're angry, you have a goal. It keeps you going. Anger can get you 3 degrees. Um, it's, but it also kind of destroys you a little bit on the inside. You might be able to use anger as fuel for a while, but it eventually catches up with you and it's not worth it. Being angry it's just not worth it. That's why they say forgive for you and not for them. Um, so some of the other things that I think made an impression on her life, even though this is after she found her family, was, of course, being the dark one, losing Hook. I think out of desperation, she could not lose him. She was sick of losing people. Even though some of her family did come back, it's just loss after loss. And I think she panicked and she said, no, I refuse. I refuse to lose again. And so I understand why she saved him. It does. Okay, I go back and forth on it because I do understand why she did it, but like him pleading to her would have caused me not to do it. I mean, in hindsight, everything worked out, after everything, but I just like he really did not want to be the dark one, and she just her selfishness took over, and I think that comes from her parents, if I'm being honest, but I'll get into that when I get to them. So let's talk about how she evolved. Okay, so she started as really grounded and skeptical. Um, she isolated herself, she was an isolated bounty hunter. Didn't have, I don't even know if she had contact. No, I think she did have, no, she didn't have any contacts. I mean, she just kind of lived life. By the end, she was actually heroic. She did things for other people. She was open. She became a wife. She had another child. Her relationship with Henry grew. I think showing her character evolve and then showing her kind of slip up, becoming the dark one. I think that's a perfect representation of people in general. Sometimes when things has happened to us in childhood, and then we kind of take these defenses with us into adulthood, and we may learn, or some people go to therapy, or some people just learn how to correct that based off of being around different types of people, because sometimes it's the people you're around. Environment plays a big role on kind of our outcomes. And so when we look at Emma and we see the slip up, I actually think that that is a good representation of real life. And I appreciate Henry for, he's such a good person, how he always just sticks next to his moms. Like he believes in them so much. And I love that they gave her that second chance to give them their memories back in season 6. And Regina kind of looks at her after Henry says we can trust her, and she says, "Can we?" And she's like, "Yes, you can." And then they give her another chance. So I really appreciate them showing that, because I believe that's how it should be. Now, obviously, people do not have to forgive you no matter what the reason of whatever it is that you did, because sometimes people are just in pain, and they do things out of pain. And the people who they do this to, they have the right to not forgive them. It'd be great if they could, but they don't have to. And so I think seeing Emma be forgiven and given another chance was very beautiful. I love that they did that. Some of the patterns she had, abandonment followed with self-protection. I mean, we saw that every time something happened, it was kind of like she had to go into herself and um and do it herself. I mean, even her taking on the darkness for Regina, was gonna, she said, you deserve your happy ending, or you deserve your chance. But why didn't Emma deserve to not be the dark one? And I get she's the savior and she felt like she had to save, but at a cost to what? And I think it's okay to be that heroic type, but at what cost? Because you deserve to be okay too. Like, you deserve to not have the evilness in you as well. Um, and so I think what we can get from Emma is that even if you even if you do struggle, things can change. Things can be better. For a long time, Emma was an orphan. And then she gained so much family. She gained family and then some. Her life became beautiful once she opened it up to the pain and the goodness. You have to be open to the pain if you want the good. So I like how her character evolved. Um, and I think at the very end, I'm thinking about in season 7 when she burst into Regina's coronation late, and I actually enjoyed that. You saw a goofy Emma kind of running in, and I really thought that was a cute way to kind of end out her character. She's just a mom trying to get somewhere on time. I really like that. Okay, so that is all I have today. Thank you for listening.